The iridescent crystalline spires of celestial station Aethera 9 pierced the violet nebula clouds like shimmering needles in the cosmic tapestry. Captain Nix Thander stood at the observation deck, her luminescent markings pulsing with concern as she studied the long-range sensor readings. Something was very, very wrong. "Confirm analysis, station intelligence," she commanded, her third eye narrowing at the anomalous data streams. The station's AI, designation NOVA, responded with its characteristic melodic tones, though today they carried an unmistakable edge of uncertainty. "Confirmed, Captain. Unknown vessel detected at coordinates 394 Mark 67. Energy signature exceeds all known parameters in our database. Hull composition includes elements not present in our periodic table." Nix's bioluminescent patterns shifted to deep indigo, a sign of deep concern among her species, the Aetherians. Their civilization had mapped this sector of space for millennia, cataloging every spacefaring race they encountered. Their philosophy of peaceful observation and minimal intervention had served them well, leading to the establishment of the Stellar Concordat, a loose alliance of advanced species. But there were whispers, tales that made even the most stoic Aetherians' markings fade to white. Stories of beings from a world of perpetual warfare who had somehow survived their own violent nature to reach the stars. "Humans. Display visual," Nix ordered, and the holographic field before her shimmered to life. The ship that materialized made her all three eyes widen in disbelief. Harsh angles of dark metal seemed to drink in the light rather than reflect it. Weapon ports lined its hull like the scales of an ancient predator. The vessel was massive, easily dwarfing the largest Aetherian ships. "Match against restricted archives," she whispered, though she already knew what the response would be. "Match found. 99.9% probability. Human warship. Classification: Dreadnought." The control room erupted in chaos. Junior officers' luminescent patterns flickered in panic sequences, their crystalline implants resonating with fear. Humans weren't supposed to be in this sector. They'd remained isolated in their own space for decades, appearing only to deal with immediate threats to galactic stability, leaving both peace and destruction in their wake. "Signal the Concordat," Nix ordered, forcing serenity into her voice, "and begin evacuation procedures for the civilian sections." "Captain," her sensor officer, Lieutenant Rail, called out, his voice trembling, "the vessel is altering course. It's heading directly for us." The human ship's movement was wrong. Nothing that large should be able to maneuver with such precision. The Aetherians built their vessels for efficiency and grace, but this ship moved like a predator, defying the conventional laws of physics themselves. "They're scanning us," Rail reported, his crystalline augments pulsing rapidly. "Our defense screens, Captain, it's as if they don't exist to their sensors." Nix felt the weight of command settle onto her shoulders. The station housed 15,000 civilians, researchers, families, artisans. The Aetherians weren't warriors. Their defensive capabilities were designed to deter pirates, not face something like this. "Open all channels," she ordered. If these were truly humans, perhaps they could be reasoned with. The stories were unclear on this point. Some said humans respected diplomatic overtures, others that they saw them as signs of weakness. Before she could transmit, the human ship sent its own message. The words appeared in perfect Aetherian script across their main display. "Celestial Station Aethera 9. This is the UES Hyperion. Hold position and maintain calm. We are not here to harm you. There is something following us. Something worse." The message was so unexpected that for a moment no one moved. Nix's luminescent patterns rippled in confusion. This didn't match any of the stories about human first contact. "Something worse," Lieutenant Rail whispered. "What could be worse than humans?" As if in answer, their long-range sensors lit up with new contacts. The readings defied comprehension. Space itself seemed to be twisting, folding in ways that shouldn't be possible. The human ship's next transmission was shorter. "Prepare your defenses. They're coming." The station's advanced holographic projectors sparked to life, materializing a figure that made every Aetherian present instinctively step back. The humans stood nearly twice their height, encased in what appeared to be battle armor that made their already imposing frame even more massive. "I am Commander James Blackwood of the UES Hyperion," the human said, his voice surprisingly measured despite his intimidating appearance. "And we have approximately 42 minutes before the first wave arrives." Nex's translator struggled with some of the subtle harmonics in the human speech, but the urgency was clear. "First wave of what, Commander?" The hologram shifted, showing a three-dimensional representation of space around the station. Dark patches appeared, areas where space itself seemed to bend and twist unnaturally. Commander Blackwood's armored form moved through the display with practiced efficiency. "We call them Void Hunters," he explained, his voice carrying the weight of hard-won knowledge. "They emerged from a dimensional rift in what you know as the Helios sector 4 months ago. They don't communicate, they don't negotiate, and they don't leave survivors." The commander's words were interrupted by a priority alert from the station's outer sensors. The readings violated fundamental laws of physics. Through the station's crystalline walls, Nyx could see the stars beginning to distort, as if reality itself was being warped. "Your station's defensive capabilities are impressive for civilian infrastructure," Blackwood continued, his armored form analyzing the sensor data with practiced ease. "But they won't be enough. The hunters consume energy. Your shields will only make them stronger." "Consume energy," Lieutenant Rail interjected, his scientific training warring with his instincts. "That's not possible. The conservation off. They don't obey our physics," Blackwood cut in, and for the first time, Nyx heard something like fear in the human's voice. "That's what makes them so dangerous. We lost 5 colonies learning that. The Hyperion isn't here by chance. We've been hunting them, trying to prevent them from reaching populated space." The sensor officer's crystalline augments were pulsing frantically as new data poured in. "Captain, the anomalies are accelerating. Energy readings are beyond our scale of measurement." Blackwood's hologram turned to face the readings, his armor systems interfacing directly with the station sensors. "They're here sooner than expected. Captain Thandor, I need you to trust us. The Hyperion's weapons are specifically designed to fight the Void Hunters, but we need your station's sensor network to target them effectively. Will you help us?" Nyx felt the weight of 15,000 lives pressing down on her shoulders. Everything she knew about humans warned against trusting them. They were violent, unpredictable, capable of destruction on a scale that terrified most civilized species. But as she watched the approaching anomalies tear holes in reality itself, she realized she was facing something far worse than humans had ever been. "What do you need from us?" she asked. The human commander's response was immediate. "Link your sensor grid to our targeting systems and evacuate everyone from the outer rings of the station. When the hunters hit, those sections won't survive. But the outer rings house our main power generators." Chief Engineer Venna protested, her markings flashing with alarm. "Your power generation methods will only draw them in faster," Blackwood explained, his hologram displaying tactical data. "The Hyperion can provide power to your essential systems. We've learned to modulate our energy emissions in ways the hunters can't process." Through the station's crystalline walls, the first visual signs of the enemy appeared. They defied description. Shapes that seemed to exist in more dimensions than space allowed, trailing tentacles of pure void that consumed light itself. Where they touched the station's outer sensor arrays, matter simply ceased to exist. "They're testing your defenses," Blackwood said grimly. "Captain, we need that sensor link now. The Hyperion's main cannon can disrupt their dimensional stability, but only if we can get a clear lock on their core structures." Nyx made her decision. "Do it," she ordered her crew. Full integration with the human chip systems. As her officers rushed to comply, she turned back to the human commander. "Why are you helping us? Everything we know about humans suggests you prefer to remain isolated, intervening only in the most extreme circumstances." For a moment, Commander Blackwood was silent, his armored form still amid the chaos of preparation. "Because we remember," he said finally. "We remember what it was like to face extinction alone. Humanity survived because we learned to fight, to become what you fear. But we didn't become strong just to watch others perish." The Void Hunters were surrounding the station now, their impossible geometries casting shadows that shouldn't exist. The Hyperion's engines flared to life, positioning the massive warship between the station and the approaching horror. "Besides," Blackwood added, and Nix could hear the grim smile in his voice, "someone needs to teach these cosmic horrors that humanity's neighborhood has rules. And the first rule is, you don't touch our neighbors." The first impact shook Aether-9 to its foundations. The Void Hunters slammed against the station's outer sections like waves of living darkness, each strike erasing matter from existence. Through the chaos, the UES Hyperion moved with impossible precision, its black hull absorbing energy pulses that would have vaporized any normal ship. Multiple breaches detected in sectors 7 through 12. Nenovia reported, its melodic tones replaced by rapid-fire updates. Structural integrity failing in outer rings. Captain Nix watched in horror as sections of her station simply vanished, consumed by the impossible geometries of the Void Hunters. But where the entities struck, the Hyperion responded. The human warship's weapons were like nothing she'd ever seen. Beams of coherent darkness that seemed to fold space itself, tearing the hunters apart at some fundamental level. "Your sensor data is perfect." Commander Blackwood's voice came through the newly established link. "We're hitting their dimensional anchor points, but there are too many. We need to change tactics." Through the command center screens, Nix could see the Hyperion's true capabilities unleashed. What had seemed like weapon ports were actually housing for devices that defied comprehension. The human ship fired projectiles that exploded into miniature black holes, tore open space-time with calculated precision, and wielded energies that shouldn't exist outside the cores of stars. "How?" Chief Engineer Venna whispered, her markings pulsing with a mix of fear and fascination as she studied the readings. "How did your species develop these technologies?" "Necessity," Blackwood replied grimly. "When the Void Hunters first appeared, our conventional weapons were useless. So we adapted, evolved, built weapons that break the same laws of physics they ignore." He paused. "Speaking of which, Captain Thandor, we're about to try something that's going to seem insane." Before Nix could respond, the Hyperion's engines flared with impossible brightness. The massive warship accelerated directly toward the largest concentration of Void Hunters, its hull beginning to glow with energies that made the station sensors scream in protest. "What are you doing?" Nix demanded, watching as the human ship seemed to be preparing to ram the entities. "Something we learned from studying the Hunters," Blackwood explained, his voice steady despite the chaos. "They exist partially outside normal spacetime, so we're going to match them. Captain, I need you to divert all power to your structural integrity fields. The next few minutes are going to get weird." The Hyperion's form began to blur, its edges becoming indistinct as it accelerated. The ship seemed to exist in multiple places at once, leaving trails of reality-scaring energy in its wake. The Void Hunters reacted, their impossible geometries twisting as they tried to adapt to this new threat. By the crystal moons, Lieutenant Rail breathed. "They're afraid. The Void Hunters are actually retreating from the human ship. They remember us." Blackwood's voice had taken on an odd echo, as if speaking from multiple times at once. "We're the only prey that ever fought back. The only food that learned to bite. Ready for Phase 2. The Hyperion's maneuver had scattered the Void Hunters, creating space between them and the station, but Nix could see the entities regrouping, their void-black forms merging into something larger, more terrible. The very fabric of space was beginning to tear around them. "They're combining their dimensional manipulation abilities," Blackwood reported. "Last time we saw this, we lost a carrier group. But this time, we're ready." He paused. "Captain Thandor, remember when I said humans prefer to be isolated? Yes, Nix responded, watching as the Hyperion's form continued to blur and shift. That's because when we work together, things tend to get explosive. Signal coming through from hyperspace. The cavalry's arriving. Space ripped open, not the organic, horrifying tears created by the Void Hunters, but precise, calculated ruptures in reality. Through these artificial holes in space came more human ships, each as black and terrible as the Hyperion, each moving with the same impossible grace. Battle Group Omega reporting for duty. A new voice joined the command channel. Sorry we're late, Blackwood. Had to finish calibrating the new reality anchors. These the neighbors you mentioned? Another human commander asked. The Aetherians have been helpful, Blackwood replied. Their sensor technology is impressive. Speaking of which, Captain Thandor, you might want to record what happens next. Your scientists will have questions. The human battle group moved into formation around the Hyperion, their ships arranging themselves in a pattern that made Nex's 3 eyes hurt to look at. Energy began to flow between them, creating a web of power that seemed to exist in more dimensions than space could allow. Dimensional resonance cascade in 3, Blackwood announced. 2, 1. The human ships fired as one, their combined weapons creating something that Nex's mind refused to fully process. Where the energy struck, the Void Hunters didn't just die. They unraveled, their impossible forms pulled apart at a quantum level. The entities screamed in frequencies that shouldn't exist, their combined form trying to retreat into whatever dark dimension they'd emerged from. But the humans had learned from their previous encounters. The battle group's weapons had created a kind of dimensional cage, trapping the hunters in normal space-time. The void entities thrashed and writhed, their form beginning to collapse in on itself. Now you see why we keep to ourselves. Blackwood's voice was almost gentle. The galaxy isn't ready for how humanity fights its wars. But sometimes, when the darkness comes, sometimes you need monsters to fight monsters. In the aftermath of the battle, Aethera 9's command center had become an impromptu war room. Holographic displays showed the debris field where the Void Hunters had been destroyed, strange energies still rippling through space. Commander Blackwood's armored form stood among the Aetherian officers, no longer a source of instinctive fear, but of wary respect. The Hunters aren't gone, Blackwood explained, manipulating the holographic display. What we destroyed was just a scouting party. There's a reason we call them waves. They come in increasing numbers, testing defenses, learning from each encounter. Nix studied the tactical data the humans had shared. The patterns were clear now. Each Void Hunter incursion had been larger than the last, their strategies evolving with each encounter. They're intelligent, she realized. Not just predatory. They're studying us. Exactly, confirmed Admiral Helena Drake, who had joined them from the newly arrived battle group. Her weathered face appeared in a separate hologram, eyes sharp with decades of combat experience. We thought they were just cosmic horrors at first, mindless entities consuming everything in their path. But they're methodical. They're preparing for something bigger. The human commander brought up new data, showing the path of Void Hunter attacks across multiple sectors. Nix's markings pulsed with shock as she recognized the pattern. They're herding species, she whispered, forcing civilizations to evacuate in specific directions, creating refugee crises, destabilizing regional politics. While everyone's focused on surviving and relocating, Lieutenant Commander Marcus Way of the UES Stalwart added, they're quietly surrounding key strategic positions. The station's sensors pinged a warning. New energy signatures were appearing at the edge of their range, more tiers in space-time, but these were different from both the Void Hunter rifts and the human ship's calculated jumps. Through the station's crystalline walls, Nix could see ships emerging from hyperspace, the distinctive organic curves of vessels from the stellar Concordat. Their arrival had been inevitable once word of the battle spread. High Admiral Zena, a familiar voice announced over the command channel. The image appeared in the command center, the most senior Aetherian military commander taking in the scene with obvious surprise, particularly the presence of human officers among her people. "Admiral," Nyx began, but Blackwood stepped forward. "Your people are in danger," the human commander said without preamble. "Not just from the Void Hunters, but from their true purpose. We've decoded enough of their quantum communications to understand their goal. They're not just consuming. They're transforming space itself, changing the fundamental constants of our universe to match their own." The Admiral's markings shifted to pure white, a sign of deepest concern. "Transforming? How?" Drake activated another holographic display, showing the aftermath of a Void Hunter-conquered sector. The very stars looked wrong, their light distorted by changes to the underlying fabric of space-time. "They're creating beachheads," Wei explained. "Areas where their physics dominate, where they can exist fully in our dimension. Once they establish enough of these zones, they'll begin connecting them." The refugee movements, Nyx realized. They're clearing space for these transformation zones. But why haven't they succeeded already? They clearly have the power. "Because of humanity," Blackwood said simply. "We're the only ones who understood what they were doing in time. The only ones willing to become what we needed to be to stop them. And now we're offering you a choice." The command center fell silent as Commander Blackwood's words hung in the air. High Admiral Zena's markings pulsed with rapid sequences of color, processing, analyzing, deciding. "What choice?" she asked finally. "Join us," Blackwood said, removing his helmet for the first time. His face was scared, but his eyes held an intensity that made even the most senior Aetherian officers pause. "Work with us. Your sensor technology, combined with our weapons, we could do more than just fight them back. We could end this." Admiral Drake's hologram nodded. "The Void Hunters are advancing on multiple fronts. Even with our entire fleet, we can't be everywhere at once. But your people's sensor networks span the galaxy. If we could integrate them with our response systems." "You're asking us to militarize," High Admiral Zena stated, her markings now a steady, contemplative blue. "To abandon thousands of years of peaceful observation. I'm asking you to survive," Blackwood countered. "The Hunters don't care about your philosophy. They don't care about your history. They're coming, and they won't stop until everything you know is transformed into their version of reality." Nyx stepped forward, her three eyes fixed on the tactical display. "Show me the projections," she requested. "If we refuse this alliance, how long?" Wei manipulated the holographic data, and the room watched in silence as the simulation played out. Void Hunter expansion zones spread like cancer across the galaxy model, stars winking out as their fundamental nature was altered. 3 years, Drake said quietly. "Maybe 4, unless they accelerate their timeline, which our models suggest they will." "And with our help?" High Admiral Zena asked. Blackwood brought up a different simulation. "With your sensor networks guiding our ships, we could establish a defense grid, create early warning systems, actually predict where they'll emerge instead of always reacting. We've already begun modifying our quantum displacement weapons to work with Aetherian targeting systems," Wei added. "The test results are promising. We could increase our effective range by at least 300%. Captain Nyx watched her superior officer carefully. The High Admiral's markings had settled into a pattern she'd never seen before, a mixture of resignation and determination. "The Concordat will need to be consulted," Zena said finally. "This decision affects all member species." "With respect, Admiral," Blackwood replied. "You don't have time for a full consultation. The Void Hunters will be back, and in greater numbers. They know now that this sector has both Aetherian and human defenders. They'll see it as a challenge." As if to emphasize his point, the station's long-range sensors began chiming urgent warnings. Lieutenant Rail's markings flashed with alarm as he analyzed the data. "Multiple dimensional distortions forming," he reported. "Largest concentration we've ever recorded. They're everywhere." The tactical display lit up with dozens, then hundreds of ruptures in space. The Void Hunters were returning, and this time they were bringing an army. "Time to choose," Admiral Blackwood said grimly. "The storm is here." High Admiral Zena's markings settled into a solid, determined purple. "Captain Thander," she commanded, "begin full integration of our sensor networks with the human battle group." "Commander Blackwood, I hope your species is ready for what comes next." "We were born ready," Blackwood replied, replacing his helmet. "Humanity has been fighting its whole existence. First ourselves, then our nature, then the void itself. But this time, we're not fighting alone." The human battle group began moving into defensive positions around Ethera 9, their black hulls reflecting the light of the approaching dimensional tiers. On the station, Aetherian technicians worked frantically alongside human engineers, merging two vastly different technologies into something new. "All ships, battle positions," Admiral Drake ordered. "Quantum displacement weapons hot. Aetherian targeting systems online. Let's show these cosmic horrors what happens when they push both our species too far." As the void between stars began to fill with impossible shapes and reality-defying geometries, Captain Nix Thander stood at her post, watching human and Aetherian officers working together with growing confidence. Perhaps this was how species truly evolved, not through peaceful observation alone, but through the courage to change when survival demanded it. "Ready for dimensional resonance cascade," Blackwood announced. "All ships prepare to fire on Aetherian targeting solutions. Let's remind the universe why humanity never lost a war, and show them why the Aetherians remained peaceful by choice, not necessity." The battle that followed would be remembered for centuries to come, the day when humanity's relentless drive to survive met Aetherian precision and insight, creating something neither species could have achieved alone. As the combined fleet engaged the Void Hunters, the galaxy witnessed the birth of a new age, one where the darkness between stars learned to fear not just humanity's wrath, but the power of unlikely allies united against a common foe. The war for reality itself had begun, and for the first time since the Void Hunters emerged from their dimensional rifts, they knew what it meant to face an enemy that would not break, would not bend, and would not back down. The galaxy would never be the same, and that was exactly what both species were fighting for.